Egypt's President el-Sisi meets King Abdullah II in Cairo and urges full Gaza truce implementation. Trial operations start on the Palestinian side of the Rafah crossing. Arab foreign ministers condemn repeated Israeli ceasefire violations in Gaza. Hello there, good evening, live from Cairo. This is Q News at 8 o'clock. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met King Abdullah II in Cairo. They called for full implementation of the Gaza Strip truce, unrestricted aid and swift reconstruction, rejecting any displacement and backing a Palestinian state on 1967 lines. Talks at Al-Ittihadiyya Palace focused on Gaza, with both leaders urging full implementation of the ceasefire and progress on Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan. They called for humanitarian assistance to enter Gaza without restrictions and for early recovery and reconstruction to begin quickly. The two leaders also condemned violations in the West Bank and reiterated opposition to any attempt to displace Palestinians from their land. They said a sovereign Palestinian state on 4th of June 1967 lines, with East Jerusalem as its capital, is the only route to lasting peace. They also urged de-escalation across the region and deeper Egypt-Jordan coordination. Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdel Ati and Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan have coordinated a unified call for immediate regional de-escalation. The ministers rejected the use of force and urged a return to diplomatic tracks to prevent the Middle East from sliding into further instability. A major focus of the discussion was the Gaza conflict, where they stressed the urgency of implementing Phase 2 of President Trump's ceasefire plan. The Egyptian and Saudi counterparts have also expressed grave concern over the humanitarian crisis in Sudan. They further condemned the recent massacres and atrocities in El Fasher, which fell to paramilitary forces in late 2025. The 57th Cairo International Book Fair has shattered records, welcoming more than 5 million visitors within just 10 days of its opening. On Saturday alone, nearly 500,000 people attended the event at the Egyptian International Exhibition Centre. This unprecedented footfall has signalled a powerful surge in cultural engagement and book purchasing across all age groups. Culture Minister Ahmed Fouad Hanno has attributed the success to a coordinated national effort and announced plans to capitalise on this momentum by launching dozens of local book fairs across Egypt's provinces and universities. Trial operations have started on the Palestinian side of the Rafah crossing. According to reports, the main aim at this stage is to secure two-way operation so residents can enter and leave the Gaza Strip smoothly once movement is fully enabled. Meanwhile, 8 foreign ministers say repeated Israeli ceasefire violations in Gaza have killed and wounded more than 1,000 Palestinians. In a joint statement, ministers from Egypt, Jordan, UAE, Indonesia, Pakistan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia and Qatar warned the violations risk inflaming tensions and undermining efforts to stabilize the Gaza Strip. They called for full compliance to support Phase 2 of the peace plan backed by Donald Trump and referenced in the UN Security Council Resolution 2803. The ministers also urged restraint, said conditions must be created for early recovery and reconstruction, and reiterated support for a just, comprehensive peace and a Palestinian state in line with international law. And for more on the Rafah crossing, ambulances were seen deployed at the Egyptian side of Rafah crossing as Egypt prepares to receive patients from Gaza. Correspondent for our sister news channel, Al Qahira News, says hospitals across North Sinai Governorate have raised readiness levels with wider preparations underway to receive Palestinian patients. Transfers from the Gaza Strip to Egypt are expected to begin tomorrow for treatment and medical services. Egypt is on round-the-clock alert to provide support. The head of Gaza's National Committee for Administration, Dr. Ali Shaath, is calling on all parties to adhere to the ceasefire. Shaath said the recent loss of Palestinian lives has been painful and devastating, and said the committee, working with partners, is committed to preventing further tragedy and protecting civilians. He called for restraint and responsibility in the next phase, insisting that any future course must be based on full respect for civilian life. Nikolai Mladinov says he is concerned by civilian deaths in reported Israeli strikes in the Gaza Strip, and is urging all sides to show restraint and respect the ceasefire. Mladinov said the National Committee for Administration of Gaza is preparing to assume civilian and security responsibilities. He said the committee's task is to stop violence and destruction and begin reconstruction, adding he is working closely with partners to support the committee's efforts to calm the situation. Gaza's health ministry says around 6,000 wounded people urgently need evacuation through Rafah crossing for treatment. The ministry says many are critical cases requiring immediate transfer, warning lives are at risk without urgent action. It says the current evacuation mechanism is insufficient and would take years at the current pace. The ministry is calling for at least 500 patients to be moved daily for treatment abroad to ensure access to specialized care. A wounded child in Gaza is questioning why attacks continue as the ceasefire remains fragile and civilian casualties mount. From a hospital bed in Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, a child being treated for injuries from an Israeli strike asked why people were targeted after the war was said to have stopped, and appealed for children in Gaza to live like children elsewhere. Medics say hospitals are struggling to cope with repeated influxes of wounded civilians, including children, as violence continues despite the truce. Thousands marched in London in a national protest for Palestinians, calling for an end to the war in the Gaza Strip. Marchers carried Palestinian flags and chanted as they moved through central London, with speakers warning of the toll on civilians and calling for sustained international action. Israel says that Doctors Without Borders, or MSF, must halt its work in the Gaza Strip by February 28th under new staff registration rules. MSF says it will not hand over detailed staff information without safeguards, warning it could endanger personnel, and says it sought guarantees on how any data would be used. Israeli authorities say the requirement applies to humanitarian groups operating in the Palestinian territories and is intended to prevent militant infiltration, a claim aid groups dispute. Palestinian sources say Israeli forces issued a military order directing a Bedouin community east of Ramallah to leave within 48 hours. According to the sources, troops raided the Bedouin community in the Karel area of South Mugayir, and handed residents a notice declaring the area a military zone and ordering them to evacuate within 2 days. The sources also said 3 foreign solidarity activists were arrested during the operation. Palestinian officials say dozens of Israeli settlers entered the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound under the protection of Israeli forces. The Jerusalem Governorate said the group performed what it describes as Talmudic rituals inside the compound during the incursion. It also reported a wedding blessing ceremony for one settler, calling it a provocative move that violates the sanctity of the site. Israeli media report that senior military officials now accept an estimate of around 70,000 Palestinians killed in Gaza, a figure that underscores the staggering human cost, and with many more still missing beneath the rubble.
Israel's occupation military is under renewed pressure over the scale of devastation in Gaza after Israeli media reported that senior security officials have accepted an estimate of around 70,000 Palestinians killed in the war, not including those still missing under the rubble. For Palestinians, it's another grim confirmation that the toll is not abstract numbers, but families erased and lives cut short. The shift matters because Israel has repeatedly questioned casualty figures issued by Gaza's health authorities, while the United Nations has long treated those records as broadly reliable. Gaza's health ministry says the death toll has now passed 71,000 and that more than 480 Palestinians have been killed in Israeli attacks since the United States brokered ceasefire took hold in October. It publishes names and ages of the dead and says many thousands more remain buried in the ruins of destroyed neighborhoods, with most of those identified listed as women or children. Officials say they are still working to distinguish between fighters and uninvolved civilians. The Israel Occupation Forces says the reports do not reflect official data and any figures will be released through official channels.
Safe with that report. Now let's go over to our newsroom where Salma Al-Fiqi is there for us. Salma.
Thank you, Mark. And for further analysis, we're now joined from Cairo by Mr. Aqif Al-Masri, the General Commissioner of the Higher Commission for Tribal Affairs in the Gaza Strip. Welcome, sir, to Q News. Sir, from your perspective in Gaza Strip, what has Egypt's support meant to Gaza's families during this period, and which Egyptian efforts have had the most direct impact on people's daily lives?
First of all, good evening to you and to everyone who's watching us here.
Yeah. Sir, from your perspective in Gaza Strip, what has Egypt's support meant to Gaza's families during this time and this period, and which Egyptian efforts do you think have had the most direct impact on people's daily lives? Can you hear us, sir? Mr. Mr. Al-Masri, I hope you can hear me now. I'll repeat my question. From your perspective, sir, in Gaza Strip, what has Egypt's support meant to Gaza's families during this period, and which Egyptian efforts have had the most direct impact on people's daily lives?
Good evening to you and to everyone who is watching us tonight. When we talk about Egypt's role in all of this when it comes to the Palestinian cause, first of all, of course, we praise Egypt's firm stance when it comes to supporting the Palestinian cause and establishing red lines when it comes to Israel and preventing them from displacing the people of Gaza. And so Egypt's stance, and Egypt didn't just act as a mediator, but Egypt has been a safe place for all the Palestinians, and Egypt could actually form the National Committee for the Gaza administration when the Palestinians welcome this, and then also Egypt has been sending humanitarian aid and alleviating the suffering of the people in the Gaza Strip.
Looking beyond the immediate emergency, sir, how can Egypt's role help build the foundations for early recovery and reconstruction in Gaza, maybe including the sustaining of the humanitarian access and supporting longer-term stability?
Egypt's stance isn't just a political one, but it is actually humanitarian too. Egypt has been protecting the Palestinians, and Egypt's administration has reiterated the importance of this committee and to opening the crossing, which has prevented Israel from changing the strip.
Egypt has visibly stepped up preparations with the ambulances deployed in hospitals in North Sinai Governorate on high alert. What message do you want to deliver to the Palestinian and Egyptian audiences, sir, about Egypt's role? And what support does Egypt need from the international community to sustain that humanitarian effort?
Actually, Egypt's stance is clear as day for everyone. Egypt has supported the Palestinian cause and the Palestinians, all of them actually know really well and realize the challenges that Egypt has faced over the course of the genocide, and Egypt has kept its firm stance and prevented Israel's goals, and they made sure to protect the civilians as much as they could. And so, Egypt has insisted on having the Gaza administration be a national one supported by all the Palestinians, and this actually was really huge from Egypt, and they made sure that representation and administration for the Gaza Strip, Egypt made sure that the representation is Palestinian, and made sure that it wasn't an Israeli one, and so this was a historic stance. And then we've also seen Egypt's support when it comes to the Palestinian rights on so many levels, and everyone depends on Egypt when it comes to reconstruction. Actually, Egypt has shifted the stances of a lot of countries around the world to stop the genocide and to start reconstruction in the Gaza Strip.
Mr. Al-Masri, from your perspective as the General Commissioner of the Higher Commission for Tribal Affairs in Gaza Strip, can you tell us what could be the practical role can community and tribal structures play in organizing movement, keeping order, and reducing tensions around the crossing?
When it comes to the crossing and the siege, that on the Gaza Strip there is an established stance when it comes to Palestinian families, and allow me to reiterate for the whole world that the displacement goals that Israel has been trying to achieve will actually come crashing down because of Egypt's efforts. And yeah, Egypt has been protecting this cause and making sure to support it as much as it can. And yeah, as I said, Egypt has had a firm stance for all of these years. And let me say here that the Palestinians won't be leaving the Gaza Strip. We won't be displaced, and we won't be bowing down to Israel's goals.
And from Cairo, that was Mr. Akif al-Masri, the General Commissioner of the Higher Commission for Tribal Affairs in the Gaza Strip. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on Q News. And now we go back to Mark Summers in our studio. Mark.
Thank you very much, Selma. Thank you very much indeed. Now from Gaza to Iran, where military warnings are rising, even as Trump says serious talks are underway. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warns any U.S. attack on Iran would ignite a wider regional conflict as tensions rise over a nuclear deal and a growing American naval presence. Speaking in that while Iran would not initiate conflict, it would deliver a firm blow to any aggressor. Despite the rhetoric and Iran's launch of live-fire naval drills in the Strait of Hormuz, diplomatic channels remain active. President Trump stated that Iran is seriously talking to the United States to avert a strike, while Iranian officials noted that a structured framework for negotiations is progressing through regional mediators. US President Donald Trump has said that Iran is engaged in serious talks with the United States. Reuters reports Trump made the comments to reporters aboard Air Force One en route to Florida, saying he hopes a negotiated outcome is possible. But he cannot predict whether Tehran will ultimately accept terms that rule out nuclear weapons. The remarks come as Ali Khamenei warned a US attack would spread into a wider regional conflict, while the United States continues a visible naval buildup in the Gulf. U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, has reinforced President Trump's resolve regarding Iran, stating that the administration's warnings are far from empty threats. In an interview, Huckabee emphasized that while Trump is a master of the art of the deal and prefers a peaceful solution, he is fully prepared to act if diplomacy fails to strip Tehran of its nuclear ambitions. Huckabee pointed to the June 2025 U.S. airstrikes that devastated Iran's nuclear facilities as evidence that the president follows through on his promises. Although he clarified that a final decision for a new strike had not been made, he noted that the current U.S. military buildup in the region is a clear signal of intent. So to Africa, more than 200 people have been killed after a landslide collapsed part of the Rubeya coltan mine in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. That's according to a spokesperson for North Kivu's rebel-appointed governor. The governor visited Rubeya to meet survivors and injured miners being treated locally as recovery efforts continued. An advisor to the governor said at least 227 deaths had been confirmed. Rubeya produces 15% of the world's coltan, which is processed into tantalum, used in phones, computers and aerospace components. The mine, where workers dig by hand for a few dollars a day, has been under the AFC M23 control since 2024. The governor urged vigilance on safety risks, recalling a deadly 27 landslide at the same site. President of Mozambique, Daniel Chapo, has inaugurated a new graphite processing plant in Mozambique as the country moves to expand output of the battery mineral. The facility has capacity of 200,000 tonnes a year and sits in DH Mining's operation in Nepepe. The company says it has invested around $200 million since starting work at the mine in 2014 and employs 890 workers, with plans to increase staffing to 2,000 in a second phase. Chapo said Mozambique wants to add value by processing minerals locally, not only exporting raw materials. Mozambique and Total Energies say they will restart construction on the company's $20 billion LNG project in Cabo Delgado after work was halted in 2021. The project was suspended after militant attacks in the north, and talks are still ongoing over extra costs linked to the delay. Total Energies says security around the area has improved, including through the development and deployment of Rwandan troops through the insurgency, though the insurgency has not fully been eliminated. The plant is designed to produce 13 million tonnes of LNG a year, with Total Energies aiming for first deliveries in 2029. So to tennis and the win everybody's talking about. Carlos Alcaraz has beaten Novak Djokovic in 4 sets to win his first Australian Open title, completing a career Grand Slam and denying Djokovic a record 25th major. The 22-year-old Spaniard won 2-6, 6-2, 6-3, 7-5 on Sunday at Rod Laver Arena. The victory gives Alcaraz his 7th Grand Slam title and makes him the youngest man to win all 4 majors, breaking a record set by Don Budge in 1938. Djokovic, a 10-time champion in Melbourne, suffered his first defeat in an Australian Open final after winning his previous 10. Egypt has won the Africa Men's Handball Championship, beating Tunisia 37-24 in the final in Kigali. The win gives Egypt a 4th straight continental title and takes them level with Tunisia on 10 championships overall. Egypt led 17-10 at half-time, with Mohamed Ahmed and Yahya Omar scoring 6 goals each. Cape Verde beat Algeria 29-23 for bronze, and Reuters reports the top 5 are Egypt, Tunisia, Angola, Cape Verde and Algeria, qualifying for the 2027 World Championship in Germany. And going back to the tennis, Elena Rybakina has won the Australian Open, beating world number 1 Zabalenka, let's just call her Zabalenka, in the world's final. Rybakina won 6-4, 4-6, 6-4 under the roof at Rod Laver Arena, reversing the result of their 2023 final rematch at Melbourne Park. The 26-year-old takes her second major title after Wimbledon in 2022 and adds another big win over Sabalenka after beating her at the WTA Finals last year. Congratulations to Rebekina. Now that brings us almost to the end of our bulletin, but before we go, here's a recap of the main headlines. Egypt's President El-Sisi meets King Abdullah II of Jordan in Cairo, urging full Gaza truce implementation. Trial operations start on the Palestinian side of the Rafah crossing. And Arab foreign ministers condemn repeated Israeli ceasefire violations in Gaza. For more stories and live updates, you can follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEGY. But from all of us here for this evening, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your Sunday night.